when I discovered my mobility-impaired mother literally shackled to our front veranda by the HOA president. I merely assumed we were grappling with a petty neighborhood tyrant. Yet, the surge of FBI agents who abruptly entered the subsequent HOA assembly unveiled a much deeper conspiracy. Why had they been monitoring us this entire time? The heavy chains clanked against the metal as my shopping bag slipped, the eggs shattering on the driveway. "Mom," my voice caught as I saw her fastened to the railing, her mobility scooter pushed completely out of reach. The chill of the dawn air was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the icy dread that pierced me when I spotted Karen Mitchell nearby, industrial-grade bolt cutters swaying from her impeccably manicured hands. "Your mother is in violation of Covenant 47B, Karen proclaimed, adjusting her designer eyewear with a smug air. "Residents with disabilities are prohibited from being unsupervised on their front porches for over 15 minutes. Mom's rheumatic, trembling hands strained against the cold, metallic links. "Amy, I was simply getting some fresh air," she whispered, her voice fragile. "I haven't left the house all week." I lunged forward, desperately grappling with the lock. "This is battery. You cannot physically restrain a handicapped woman to her own residence." My hand quivered with fury as I struggled to release her. Karen's grin sharpened. "The HOA council granted me total implementation authority. Review your covenants." "Covenants?" I sputtered. "What legal document permits you to use physical force?" "The one your mother affixed her signature to upon moving in here." Karen smoothly retrieved her cell phone, casually navigating to Section 12, Paragraph 4. "The Homeowners Association maintains the right to employ any necessary steps to guarantee adherence to community regulations." Tears welled up in Mom's eyes. "I never consented to this." I finally managed to detach the chains and gently guided Mom back in her scooter. Her wrists were marked with angry, crimson indentations where the metal had bitten deep. "I am contacting the authorities." "Be my guest," Karen shrugged carelessly. "Officer Davidson happens to be my spouse's brother. Besides, I possess documentation for every alleged infringement." As I wheeled Mom indoors, a strange detail caught my attention. A dark-colored sedan was idling across the avenue, the engine running. The windows were too heavily tinted to see inside, yet I had the distinct impression of being under surveillance. Once safely inside, I settled Mom beneath her preferred quilt and prepared her a warm drink. Her hand still shook slightly as she raised the teacup. "Amy, I am so sorry you had to witness that." "Sorry, Mom?" "You are the individual being victimized here." I quickly got my phone to photograph her injuries. "This is far beyond simple HOA interference. This is undeniably criminal." "They have been increasing the pressure for several weeks," Mom quietly confided. "Initially, it was just formal complaints about my assistant's dog's barking, despite Max only making noise when I genuinely require aid. Next, they claimed my access ramp wasn't the correct shade of neutral beige." "Why did you keep this from me?" She averted her gaze. "You're already working tirelessly. I didn't want to become an additional difficulty." "Mom, please stop," I said, kneeling beside her chair. "You are not a difficulty. You are my mother, and absolutely no one, especially not some authority-crazed HOA chief, is allowed to treat you in this manner." I spent that entire afternoon contacting legal offices, but not a single attorney would consider our legal action. HOAs possess extensive regulatory powers, they uniformly stated. Challenging them is costly and typically a lost cause. As evening approached, I was doing online research when an unexpected message appeared. Official warning of further infringements. Karen had slapped us with a $5,000 penalty for scooter track damage on the lawn, plus an extra $500 charge for the unauthorized removal of the restraint device. "This is absolutely preposterous," I murmured, rapidly examining our HOA papers. It was then I located the loophole buried under a barrage of subsections, wording that was clearly intentionally ambiguous regarding the proper application of enforcement. Mom scooted into my home office. "That same vehicle is here again," she noted, motioning towards the window. The black sedan had not moved. As I observed, the driver's window retreated slightly. I quickly discerned what seemed to be a recording lens before the window instantly rose again. "Mom, how long has that car been observing our property?" She paused for a moment. "Approximately 2 weeks. It started just after I submitted that formal complaint about Karen utilizing HOA funds for her personal garden project." A chill ran down my spine. "You filed a formal complaint?" I noticed financial inconsistencies in the reports at the previous assembly. Karen has been charging the HOA for renovations done on her own premises. Suddenly, the reasoning behind the change became clear. This had nothing to do with porch infractions. It was entirely about silencing Mom. The following morning, I discovered our refuse bins had been deliberately repositioned to obstruct Mom's access ramp. A notice was affixed to one. "Containers must be placed out of direct sight. $200 penalty for non-compliance." As I was relocating them, our neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, rushed over quickly. "I witnessed the person who did it," she whispered. "It was Karen's son. Around 3 a.m. I have security footage." "Why the secrecy?" I asked. She nervously darted her eyes around. "Because Karen has informers everywhere. She successfully got the Patels evicted last month for displaying prayer banners. Claimed they were unapproved external decorations. That is prejudice." "Shoo!" Mrs. Rodriguez pressed something small into my hand. "A digital flash drive. There's far more information on this. Be careful." Back inside, I inserted the drive. Dozens of video clips displayed Karen and her associates harassing residents, relocating bins, taking photos of homes at strange times, and even interfering with mail receptacles. "Mom, you have to see this." We reviewed clip after clip, meticulously creating a timeline of abuse. A definitive pattern quickly emerged. Every single target had either challenged Karen's authority or possessed some form of a physical impairment. That very evening, another electronic mail arrived. "Urgent HOA assembly. Immediate disciplinary action required." The subject line alone made my stomach churn with anxiety. Resident Margaret Thompson. Multiple infractions. "They're coming for you again," I stated. Mom sat up straighter in her chair. "Let them try their worst. I didn't survive 3 combat deployments in Afghanistan just to be intimidated by a suburban dictator." At the general meeting, Karen presented a meticulously prepared presentation of Mom's alleged violations. Inconsistencies in the lawn height, an unapproved bird feeder, and excessive use of the handicapped parking space. Each image elicited audible gasps from the attendees. "Mrs. Thompson has accrued fines totaling more than $10,000, Karen declared. "We are obligated to consider foreclosure proceedings." I stood up firmly. "This is malicious harassment. Nothing more, nothing less." "Take your seat, Miss Thompson. You're not a homeowner. You have no right to speak here." "But I certainly do," a man's voice called out from the back. Other voices quickly joined the dissent. Residents whom Mom had quietly assisted over the years. Karen's face turned mottled red as the support swelled. "Order." She violently struck her gavel. "The board will now vote on the foreclosure." Just as the board prepared to cast their votes, the main doors of the assembly room flew open. A man in an imposing dark business suit strode in, his eyes methodically sweeping the room. His gaze fixed on Karen, then momentarily on us. "Please, don't interrupt your business on my account," he said, taking a seat at the back. Karen's confidence visibly wavered. "Who exactly are you?" "Just a concerned citizen." He produced a small notebook. The board voted, but 2 members, astonishingly, voted in our favor. Karen's absolute authority was beginning to crumble. Following the meeting, the suited man approached us. "Mrs. Thompson, that was a truly fascinating presentation tonight. Do I know you?" Mom inquired. He presented her with a plain business card. It was completely blank apart from a phone number. "If the situation escalates further, dial this number." He departed before we had a chance to ask any further questions. In the dimly lit parking lot, we discovered our vehicle had been vandalized with deep scratches spelling the word, "Leave." The mysterious black sedan was nowhere to be seen, but somehow I felt a little less isolated. That night, sifting through the USB files once more, I found a detail that made my blood run cold. Official property deeds showing Karen's spouse's corporation had acquired 6 houses in our development. All of them had been previously owned by residents with disabilities. I looked at Mom, sleeping peacefully with Max curled up at her feet. Tomorrow, I vowed, I will start connecting the rest of the pieces. Tonight, I must devise our counter-strategy. The battle for Silverbrook Estates had truly commenced. Rain beat against our windows as I laid documents out across the dining table. Just 3 days after the meeting, Mom's penalties had mysteriously doubled. Now, they alleged her service animal's mere breathing was disrupting the peace, and her accessible ramp violated architectural harmony standards. "They cannot be serious," Mom exclaimed, reviewing the latest document. "Max possesses full medical documentation. They aren't trying to be serious, Mom. They are attempting to overwhelm us with bureaucracy and fees until we finally surrender." The doorbell rang sharply. Through the viewer, I saw my best friend Sarah, drenched from the storm, holding a significant stack of folders. "You simply won't believe what I uncovered," she stated, rushing inside. As a paralegal, Sarah had access to official records that most people wouldn't even know to look for. She spread papers on our table, overlapping with my own research. Every single house the Mitchells had bought followed the exact same formula. A disabled resident was subject to escalating HOA fines, then forced to sell, and the property was subsequently resold for 3 times the initial cost. "That is absolutely illegal," I stated. "If we can only demonstrate intent." "But look at this," she said, pulling out a highlighted file. Karen's original surname, Harrison, as in Harrison Development Corporation, the company purchasing all of these properties. Mom leaned in closely. "So, it is a family enterprise. A fundamentally corrupt one," Sarah added. "They have been operating this scheme across 3 different states." The house lights suddenly flickered and died, plunging us into absolute darkness. Max let out a low growl, the first sound he'd made all day. "It's likely the weather," Mom suggested, but her voice was unsteady. I grabbed my phone for illumination and checked our outdoor cameras. They were also offline. Through the window pane, I noticed that every other house's power was active. "This is not the storm," I whispered. A sudden, loud knock at the back door made all 3 of us start violently. I quickly grabbed Mom's old wooden baseball bat and crept towards the door. Through the glass, I saw Mrs. Rodriguez holding a flashlight. "They severed your power line," she said immediately after I let her inside. I saw them clearly from my kitchen window. "Karen's son and 2 other men. Did you immediately contact the police?" She shook her head. "The police chief is Karen's cousin, but I managed to film it." She handed me her phone. The video footage showed 3 shadowy figures in HOA jackets cutting our main power line. It was crystal clear. "This is irrefutable evidence of criminal vandalism," Sarah stated. "We must." A loud crash from the living room interrupted her mid-sentence. Someone had hurled a brick straight through our front window. Attached was a handwritten note. "Final opportunity." Mom wheeled herself swiftly towards the shattered glass, fury instantly replacing her fear. Enough with the passive defense. The following morning, despite the lack of electricity, we launched our all-out counterattack. Sarah immediately filed formal complaints with the State Housing Authority, while I contacted various local news outlets. "You want a story about massive HOA corruption?" I informed the reporter. "I have absolute proof of systematic discrimination targeting disabled residents." Within mere hours, a news broadcast van was parked outside. Karen appeared almost instantly, her expensive heels clicking loudly on the pavement. "This is private property," she informed the camera crew. "No filming without official HOA permission." "Public street," the reporter quickly rebutted. "First Amendment rights." As they argued, I supplied the news team with our full dossier. The USB videos, the property records, and last night's power line footage. "This is absolute slander." Karen shrieked when she realized the gravity of the situation. "I will see you all bankrupt." "The truth is an absolute defense against defamation," Sarah called out loudly, earning herself a murderous glare. The news segment aired that very evening on a generator-powered television. Karen appeared completely unstable, yelling about fluctuating property values while we calmly presented the evidence of discrimination. Our phones immediately exploded with calls from other traumatized victims. The Jamalin family shared how Karen had referred to their Ramadan decorations as terrorist symbols. Mr. Sato described receiving a fine for utilizing a walking cane without the necessary HOA approval. "We must quickly get organized," Mom declared. By midnight, we had established a Facebook group called Silverbrook Survivors. Within a couple of hours, we had 50 members. Karen retaliated with great speed. The next morning, a locksmith was on our property replacing the door locks. Foreclosure proceedings, he explained apologetically. HOA directives. They cannot foreclose that quickly, I protested vehemently. Emergency powers provision. Karen smirked from the sidewalk. Didn't bother to examine the small print, did you? Sarah was already on the phone with the legal aid office. They require a court order for this. This is an illegal eviction, ma'am. The locksmith hesitated. I truly want no trouble. Then you should depart, Mom said with firm authority. Because trouble is precisely what you will face if you continue. He immediately packed his tools and left. Karen's face turned deep purple with absolute rage. That afternoon, while meticulously documenting everything for our legal representation, I noticed the black sedan had returned. This time, I went right up to it. "Hey," I banged hard on the window. "I know you're watching us." The window lowered slightly. A deep, resonant voice instructed, "Please step back." "Who are you? Why are you stalking my mother?" "For her personal safety," the voice replied. "Check your mailbox." Confused, I walked over to our mailbox. Inside was a manila folder with no postal mark. It contained candid photos of Karen meeting with known criminal figures, bank statements revealing substantial cash withdrawals, and a small note. "We are compiling the evidence. Keep pressing forward." I looked back, but the sedan had vanished completely. That evening, our Facebook group erupted with frantic activity. Someone posted internal HOA emails showing Karen discussing Operation Clean Sweep, a coordinated scheme to systematically purge undesirable elements from Silverbrook. "This is it," Sarah exclaimed. "This conclusively proves conspiracy." We quickly organized a peaceful public protest for the following day. Dozens of residents assembled with signs that read, "HOA equals harassment organization, association, and people over property values." Karen immediately contacted the local police, claiming we were illegally trespassing on common HOA property. Officer Davidson, Karen's brother-in-law, arrived on the scene. But to everyone's utter shock, he looked noticeably uneasy. "This is a legally protected assembly," he told Karen curtly. "I cannot remove them without sufficient cause." "I am your family," she hissed venomously, "and I am a sworn officer of the law. The law always comes first." As the protest continued, a news helicopter materialized overhead. Our story was rapidly gaining viral traction. That night, Mom received a call from the mysterious number on the blank business card. "Mrs. Thompson, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Federal Courthouse. Bring every single document you possess." Who is this speaking? Someone who has been patiently waiting for Karen Mitchell to make a major blunder. She just made a very significant one. After hanging up, I found Mom contemplating an old photo album. "Amy, there is something I must tell you," she began. "Before I formally retired, I was employed in military intelligence. I was specifically investigating patterns of housing discrimination targeting veterans." My jaw literally dropped. "You were investigating this kind of activity until my disability forced an early medical discharge. But I never stopped monitoring the situation. Karen targeting me was not a coincidence. Someone likely informed her about my previous profession. So, when they chained you to the porch, their goal was to silence me through intimidation. But they chose the wrong veteran to bully." As we prepared for the courthouse meeting, our phones simultaneously buzzed with urgent breaking news. FBI executes raid on HOA president's residence. The screen showed federal agents removing boxes from Karen's house while she screamed loudly about her constitutional rights. Mom offered a grim smile. "The chains that they used to bind me have now become the irrefutable evidence that will imprison her." The war had not concluded, but the momentum had finally shifted in our favor. Your mother is a drain on this neighborhood. Those words were still echoing in my mind when the main doors of the HOA meeting room burst open. 5 formidable men in dark suits stormed inside, their FBI badges reflecting the light of the overhead fixtures. Every single person remained rigidly seated. The lead agent's voice reverberated through the abruptly silent room. Karen's face instantly turned an unhealthy shade of white as she dropped her papers, sending them scattering to the floor like dead leaves. I watched, my heart pounding furiously, as the agent walked directly towards Karen. Karen Mitchell, you are currently under arrest for federal housing discrimination, elder abuse, and racketeering. What? This is absolutely preposterous. Karen shrieked, stumbling backwards until she made contact with the whiteboard. I am the elected president of this HOA. You cannot simply. We can and we are. The agent sharply interrupted her, producing handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, grabbed my arm in shock. Amy, did you have prior knowledge of this? I shook my head. I was just as confused as everyone else. But then I recalled the black sedan and the radio transmissions I had overheard. They have been observing Karen, not us. You set me up. Karen screamed at me as they secured the handcuffs. You and your useless, crippled mother. The entire room gasped collectively. Even Karen's most loyal supporters looked genuinely shocked by her statement. Actually, the lead agent said, turning to address me, we have been investigating Mrs. Mitchell for 6 months. Your mother is certainly not our first target. But thanks to your provided evidence, she will definitively be the last. My evidence? I questioned. I had only submitted official complaints to the city last week. As they escorted Karen out, still shouting about conspiracies, the agent approached me. Miss Thompson, I am Agent Rodriguez. We need to speak privately. The remaining HOA board members sat frozen like statues. Rodriguez addressed them pointedly. This meeting is officially concluded. We will be in contact with each and every one of you. People quickly dispersed like roaches scattering when a light is turned on. Within minutes, only Sarah, Mom, and I remained with the FBI agents. How long have you truly known about this? I asked Rodriguez once we were alone. Long enough to understand your mother was facing genuine danger, he responded. But we required concrete proof of physical abuse. When Mitchell shackled your mother to that porch, she provided us with precisely the leverage we needed. Mom wheeled forward decisively. You deliberately used me as a lure? No, ma'am. We were actively ensuring your safety. We had a team of agents prepared to intervene immediately if the situation escalated beyond what transpired. Sarah, always the paralegal, jumped in. What about the numerous other victims? The clear pattern of targeting residents with disabilities? Rodriguez nodded grimly. We have documented 37 cases across 3 states. The Mitchells would systematically infiltrate HOAs, harass protected class residents, the elderly, disabled, and minorities, until they were forced to sell their homes at severely reduced prices. Then, they would immediately flip the properties for enormous profits. But why target my mom specifically? I insisted. Why resort to chaining her up? Rodriguez exchanged a significant look with his partner. That particular aspect is rather complicated. May we continue this conversation at your residence? The sheer magnitude of the operation was staggering. Mrs. Thompson, Rodriguez began. Are you aware that Karen Mitchell's husband served in the same military unit as you? Mom's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. That's impossible. I would absolutely recall him. Not at the same exact time, Rodriguez clarified. He was dishonorably discharged for misconduct 2 years following your retirement. But he retained access to sensitive personnel files. My stomach lurched. He knew Mom was military intelligence. We strongly believe so. When the Mitchells relocated to Silverbrook and saw your mother's name on the resident manifest, they immediately panicked. They genuinely feared she might be investigating them. Mom let out a bitter laugh. I have been retired for a decade. I just wanted to peacefully enjoy my small garden. Their paranoia actually became your ultimate shield, Rodriguez elaborated. They became so obsessed with neutralizing you as a perceived threat, they grew careless. The physical restraint, the flagrant discrimination, it all created a perfect paper trail for us. Sarah was feverishly taking notes. What about the rest of the board members? Are they also complicit? Some are. We are currently sorting through the extent of who knew what. Rodriguez pulled out another file. But here's a crucial detail. 3 board members quietly came to us last month. They were terrified of Karen, but had no idea how to stop her. Who exactly? I demanded. I can't reveal their identities yet, but they have been supplying us with internal information. Mom rubbed her temples wearily. So, this entire time, while I believed my neighbors utterly despised me, some were genuinely terrified of losing their homes if they dared to defend you. Rodriguez finished somberly. Karen Mitchell ruled this entire community through sheer terror. The doorbell rang, causing all of us to jump. Rodriguez's hand instinctively went to his hip where I assumed he kept his weapon. He relaxed only when Sarah checked the viewer. It's Mrs. Peterson and a few others. Rodriguez nodded. Allow them entry. It is time a neighborhood was told the truth. What followed was deeply moving. Neighbors I had believed were loyal to Karen filed in, many of them in tears. Mrs. Peterson spoke first. Amy, your mother, we desperately wanted to help, but Karen explicitly threatened to seize our homes. She possessed damaging information on everyone. Mr. Jameson, who had previously complained about Mom's access ramp, hung his head in shame. She claimed she would report my son's visa status if I refused to file complaints against Mrs. Thompson. Story after story poured out. Karen had blackmailed, threatened, and masterfully manipulated the entire community. The fabricated violations against Mom were merely the most visible surface element of the iceberg. Why did no one contact the local police? I asked, my frustration mounting. We did, Mrs. Peterson replied. But Karen's brother-in-law is a high-ranking officer. All the complaints simply vanished. Rodriguez nodded grimly. That is precisely why the FBI had to intervene. Local systemic corruption. Mom gently reached for my hand. Amy, dear, I knew something was profoundly wrong. That is why I deliberately insisted on sitting out on the porch that day. You knew she would escalate the situation? I stared at her in disbelief. I knew she would do something recklessly stupid if I deliberately pushed her buttons. I just truly didn't anticipate chains. Mom's military demeanor reasserted itself. Sometimes you must allow the adversary to overcommit and expose their hand. Rodriguez smiled widely. Your mother's instincts have certainly not diminished. She made our task considerably easier. So, what precisely happens next? Sarah asked. Now, we systematically dismantle the entire criminal operation. We possess sufficient evidence to bring down not just the Mitchells, but their entire nationwide network. But we require your active assistance. Our assistance, I echoed, testifying, providing documentation, and Rodriguez hesitated. We would like to utilize your house as a temporary command center. Karen's accomplices are unaware they have been compromised yet. Mom straightened fully in her scooter. You wish to run a full covert operation from my living room. If you're agreeable, Rodriguez replied. I looked at Mom, thinking of everything she had endured, the humiliation, the physical pain, the isolation. Then I saw the fierce fire in her eyes, the exact same fierce resolve that had carried her through 2 decades of military service. They chose the wrong family to target, Mom declared. When do we begin? Rodriguez grinned broadly. How about right this instant? We have the surveillance gear in the van. As agents began setting up sophisticated cameras and computers in our spare bedroom, literally transforming it into a scene from a spy film, our doorbell rang once more. This time, Rodriguez answered the door himself. A man in an expensive designer suit stood there, a briefcase firmly in hand. I am Kenneth Mitchell's legal representative, he announced pompously. I have an urgent message for Mrs. Thompson. Rodriguez stepped to one side, deliberately allowing the lawyer to see the room crowded with FBI agents and equipment. The lawyer's composure utterly fractured. Perhaps I should return at a later time, he stammered nervously. No, Mom called out clearly. Deliver your specific message. We're all close friends here. The lawyer nervously swallowed hard. Mr. Mitchell is prepared to propose a very substantial settlement if you consent to drop all charges and sign a non-disclosure agreement. The room became utterly silent. Then, Mom let out a loud, rich laugh I had not heard in months. "Tell Mr. Mitchell," she said sweetly, "that he can take his pathetic settlement and stick it somewhere the sun will never shine. I'm just getting started." The lawyer quickly scurried away like a rat abandoning a sinking ship, and our home was fully converted into FBI headquarters before my very eyes. Agents installed cameras, computers, and sophisticated recording devices while Mom directed the activity from her scooter like a commanding general. "Place that camera precisely there," she commanded, pointing to a bookshelf. "It will perfectly capture anyone approaching the front door." Rodriguez watched with great amusement. "Mrs. Thompson, you possess a natural talent for this." 20 years in military intelligence," Mom replied with a knowing wink. You genuinely believe this is my first time?" That's when the real bombshell was dropped. Rodriguez pulled me aside, his face suddenly serious. "Amy, there is something else you absolutely must know. Your mother was not just any ordinary intelligence officer." "What do you mean specifically?" "She specialized in domestic terrorism and organized crime. Before her retirement, she was actively investigating patterns of housing discrimination across the nation." My jaw dropped again. She never once told me that. She was forbidden to. A large part of her work remains classified. Rodriguez glanced over at Mom, who was currently instructing an agent on how to conceal a microphone. "We believe she instantly recognized something in Karen Mitchell's methodology that triggered her old professional instincts. That is precisely why she kept such detailed notes of every single infraction. I realized she was subtly building a case." "Exactly. Your mother has been inadvertently assisting us this entire time." Sarah suddenly burst through the front door, laptop in hand. "You all need to see this." We gathered around as she quickly pulled up various social media platforms. Karen's arrest video had already become a national sensation. But that was not what truly captured my attention. "Look closely at the comment section." Sarah scrolled down rapidly. Dozens of people from other communities were sharing eerily similar stories about the Mitchells Corporation. The full scope was far broader than we had ever imagined. Screenshots of threatening emails, photographs of vandalized homes, and official testimony from families forced to sell. It was all documented there. "This is absolutely perfect," Rodriguez said. "Public visibility will make it impossible for them to try and bury this case." Mom rolled over to us. "Speaking of pressure, when exactly does the covert operation commence?" "Tonight. We have successfully identified 3 HOA board members who are still actively collaborating with Kenneth Mitchell. They believe Karen's arrest was solely due to the chaining incident. They have no idea we possess evidence of the entire criminal enterprise." "What is the exact plan?" I asked. "It's simple. We strategically leak information that your mother possesses secret documents proving the conspiracy. Then, we wait to see who comes looking for them." "You're using Mom as bait again?" "No," Mom interjected firmly. "I am volunteering my services. These individuals terrorized our friends and neighbors. They caused Mrs. Peterson's husband to die with the fear he would lose his home. They explicitly threatened to deport the Jameson boy. Someone must stop them." That evening, we initiated the plan. Sarah posted on the neighborhood's Facebook group that Mom had unexpectedly discovered interesting documents while organizing our files. Within 60 minutes, our security cameras captured someone sneaking around our backyard. "That is Tom Reynolds," I whispered, watching the monitor intently. "He is currently on the HOA board." Tom tested our back door, then moved to a nearby window. What he did not know was that a team of agents was positioned inside our garage. FBI remained motionless. They apprehended him red-handed with lockpicks and a flashlight. During questioning, he confessed everything: names, dates, and secret bank accounts. The Mitchells have been systematically paying board members to harass residents. But Tom revealed one final critical detail. Karen keeps the true financial records in a secure deposit box. Everything: the cash bribes, the documented threats, the forged documents. "Where is it located?" Rodriguez demanded. "First National Bank, Box 307. But only she is authorized to access it. Rodriguez made a quick phone call. 20 minutes later, he had news. The judge has granted a warrant. We are retrieving that box first thing tomorrow. Mom yawned dramatically. Well, this old lady desperately needs her rest. Fighting crime is surprisingly exhausting at my age. After everyone else had left, I found Mom in the kitchen, gazing out the window. Are you all right? I asked her gently. I spent years actively fighting corruption from the shadows, she said softly. I truly believed retirement meant leaving all of that behind. But evil simply does not retire, does it? Is that why you never told me about your actual profession? She turned her scooter to face me directly. I wanted you to experience a normal, happy life. Not one where you are constantly looking over your shoulder, suspicious of everyone. But you trained me anyway, didn't you? All those games we played growing up, teaching me to observe small details, read nonverbal cues, think strategically. Mom smiled knowingly. Guilty is charged. A mother prepares her own child for the specific world she understands. The next morning, Rodriguez called with crucial updates. We successfully obtained the contents of the safe deposit box. Karen meticulously documented absolutely everything, as if she was proud of her accomplishments. We found records spanning 15 years across 6 different states. How many families were victimized? I asked. A minimum of 200. Mostly the elderly, disabled, or minority groups. The Mitchells made millions illegally. But there was more, Rodriguez continued. Amy, we also discovered something deeply personal. Karen maintained a full file on your mother. Military records, medical information, even surveillance photographs. She was clearly obsessed. Why? Your mother testified against her father 20 years ago. He was running a similar criminal enterprise targeting veterans. She didn't recognize the surname Mitchell. Karen used her married name. The remaining pieces slotted into place. This was partially revenge, but mostly motivated by intense fear. Karen understood that if anyone could successfully expose her, it was my mother. That afternoon, our neighborhood held an emergency town hall meeting at the community center. Without Karen's intimidation, people spoke openly and freely. The stories were heartbreakingly similar. They convinced me my autism made me an unfit neighbor, one young man shared. Claimed my cultural decorations violated aesthetic standards, Mrs. Kim added. They even attempted to prohibit my service dog, a blind resident revealed. Mom listened intently to every story, her notepad quickly filling with names and dates. When everyone had finished speaking, she wheeled to the very front of the room. I let you all down, she began, her voice strong yet emotional. I saw the telltale signs, but mistakenly thought I was just being paranoid. My specialized training should have— No, Mrs. Peterson interrupted firmly. You are the only person brave enough to fight back. Murmurs of agreement filled the assembly hall. Then Mr. Jameson stood up. I formally moved to elect Mrs. Thompson as the interim HOA president. The vote was unanimous. That evening, as we celebrated with neighbors who had now become friends, Rodriguez pulled me aside for one last time. The Mitchell's lawyer contacted us. They're seeking to make a deal. A full confession in exchange for substantially reduced prison sentences. Will you accept it? No. We possess more than enough evidence to ensure they face the maximum penalty. Plus, your mother provided us with a truly fascinating detail. It turns out she kept certified copies of every classified report she ever filed. Legal ones she was permitted to retain, including a decade-old investigation into housing discrimination that specifically mentions shell companies matching the Mitchell's scheme. I laughed softly. She knew the whole time. Not explicitly, but she harbored deep suspicions. That is precisely why she relocated here after your father passed away. She was inadvertently hunting without even fully realizing it. Looking at Mom, surrounded by grateful neighbors, I saw her not as my disabled mother requiring protection, but as the fierce warrior she had always been, actively fighting injustice, even from a wheelchair. Some people truly never retire, Rodriguez observed thoughtfully. No, I agreed. Watching Mom organize committees and delegate tasks. They simply discover new battlefields. As the sun finally set on Silverbrook Estates, children played happily in yards where fear had once reigned supreme. Neighbors actively helped one another without suspicion. And at the epicenter of it all sat my mother, the woman they had cruelly tried to shackle down. Now, she was the one breaking the chains for everyone else. Amy, immediately switch to Channel 7 right now. Sarah's voice was distorted and panicked over the phone as I scrubbed red spray paint from our garage door. The word traitors was still bleeding through despite my best efforts. I rushed inside where Mom was consoling our assistance dog, Max, who had violently vomited the poisoned meat we had discovered in our yard. The television screen flickered to life, showing Karen Mitchell standing defiantly on the courthouse steps, a microphone in her hand. These people are demanding special privileges. Karen screamed at the gathered crowd. They hide behind their so-called disabilities while actively destroying our property values and the traditional American way of life. My stomach bottomed out. Behind her stood at least 50 vocal supporters waving signs that read, "Save our neighborhood and no special rights." Mom gripped my hand tightly. She is escalating this into something far larger. Within an hour, protesters completely lined our street. Half were supporting us with signs that read, "Justice for veterans and end HOA abuse." The other half were loudly chanting Karen's rhetoric about property values and special treatment. Our once tranquil neighborhood had been completely transformed into a political battleground. "We must take action before this turns physically violent," I told Mom, watching through the window as heated arguments erupted between the two groups. She nodded decisively, already reaching for her scooter. "Help me get outside, Mom." "No, it's far too dangerous out there, honey. I have faced much worse than angry neighbors." Her military steel was back in her eyes. Sometimes you are required to confront conflict directly. As we reached our front door, Mrs. Peterson from next door appeared on our porch. "I am joining you," she declared, leaning heavily on her walker. Karen explicitly threatened my family as well. Then Mr. and Mrs. Jamalton joined us. "We stand together," Mr. Jamaluddin stated firmly. More neighbors emerged from their homes. The Garcias with their autistic son, elderly Mr. Thompson with his oxygen tank, and the Gwynns, whose daughter relied on a wheelchair. People Karen had systematically targeted for years. Together, we slowly moved toward the crowd. The furious shouting instantly subsided as they saw us approach. Mom positioned herself perfectly between the two opposing groups. "Listen to me." Her commanding voice carried effortlessly across the lawn. "This is not about choosing sides. It is entirely about how we treat one another as fellow human beings." A man in a Save Our Neighborhood shirt took a step forward. "You people are ruining absolutely everything." "What is your name?" Mom asked calmly. "Tom Wilson." "Tom, do you recall what I was doing the moment Karen shamefully chained me to my porch?" "I was peacefully enjoying the small garden your daughter helped me plant last spring. Remember? She earned her Girl Scout badge teaching me about the care of roses." Tom's face softened visibly. Mom continued, "I served 20 years actively protecting everyone's rights, including your specific right to vehemently disagree with me. But at what point did simply desiring to live with dignity become un-American?" Phones instantly appeared, recording her every word. Someone was live-streaming the entire event to Facebook. "Look around you." Mom gestured to our diverse group of neighbors. "We are not demanding special privileges. We are merely asking to be treated as human beings." Mrs. Peterson spoke up next. "Karen fined me $3,000 because my husband required a wheelchair ramp after his serious stroke. She called it an eyesore." The Jamaluddins shared how Karen had referred to their Ramadan decorations as foreign garbage. One by one, the victims shared their painful stories. The crowd's hostile mood visibly began to shift. Some of Karen's most ardent supporters lowered their signs, looking deeply uncomfortable. "But the property values," someone weakly protested. "My house value dropped by 30% after my husband passed," Mrs. Peterson replied. "Not because of his wheelchair ramp, but because good, decent neighbors kept relocating, genuinely scared of Karen's exorbitant fines and absurd regulations." That statement struck a deep chord. People began murmuring amongst themselves about their own difficult HOA experiences. Tom Wilson was the first to completely switch allegiance. He pulled off his Save Our Neighborhood shirt and walked over to our side. "I'm truly sorry," he said to Mom. "I genuinely did not know." Others quickly followed his example. Soon, the majority of Karen supporters had joined our group. That night, our video went completely viral. The hashtags #ChainVeteran and #HOAJustice trended nationally. News vans arrived early the next morning. Agent Rodriguez called. "This fundamentally alters everything. We are receiving calls from HOA victims across the entire country. The Mitchell investigation has just been expanded to 16 states." But our victory celebration was quickly interrupted by another breaking news bulletin. Karen had vanished entirely, along with $2 million from the HOA bank account. Her husband appeared on camera, sweating profusely. I had absolutely no knowledge of what she was doing. She left this note saying she would rather die than face prison. The words of the note chilled me to the bone. "This is not finished. They will all pay for destroying everything I constructed." Mom looked grave. "She's increasing the intensity. People this desperate are capable of desperate actions." At 3 a.m., we were jolted awake by Max's frantic barking. Through the window, we saw bright flames. Someone had set fire to the community center where we had stored all our physical evidence against Karen. As sirens wailed loudly and neighbors gathered in their pajamas, I realized this was no longer just about an HOA dispute. Karen had officially declared war. Fire trucks battled the inferno while I frantically called Agent Rodriguez. All our evidence was inside there. The documents, the recordings, everything. "Calm yourself," Rodriguez instructed. "We backed up everything to FBI servers yesterday." Karen is unaware of that fact, but the damage was done. Fear once again rippled through our community. 2 families move away that same week, completely spooked by the act of arson. Then came a mass email blast sent to every resident. "You believe you have triumphed? Just watch what occurs next, Karen." Security cameras started mysteriously failing. Pets went missing. Car tires were slashed. Karen was terrorizing us from the deep shadows. "We must find a way to lure her out," Mom strategized during an emergency meeting in our living room. "She's clearly unraveling. Desperate individuals make mistakes." Sarah presented an idea. "What if we formally announced that we had found additional evidence? Something she is certain we did not back up." We meticulously prepared our trap. I posted on a social media site, just located Karen's secret secondary set of books hidden inside Mom's old military footlocker. "Turning them over to the FBI tomorrow." Mom played her part perfectly, making a grand display of moving a heavily locked footlocker into our garage. That night, we waited patiently. Rodriguez had agents concealed throughout the neighborhood. At 2 a.m., a shadowy figure crept slowly toward our garage. Floodlights instantly blazed on. "FBI, don't move." But it was not Karen. It was her husband, David Mitchell. "Please," he begged as they secured the handcuffs. "She forced me to do it. She's been watching every single thing through covert cameras she installed months ago." The revelation sent a fresh wave of chills through me. Karen had been surveilling the entire neighborhood. "Where is she now?" Rodriguez demanded forcefully. "Canada," David sobbed. "She has a fake passport, but she is definitely coming back. She said she has one final surprise planned." 3 days later, at Karen's sentencing hearing in absentia, we learned precisely what that surprise entailed. She had hired an attorney to file a massive countersuit against every single resident who had spoken out against her, claiming defamation and conspiracy. The judge looked visibly disgusted as he reviewed the filing. "Mrs. Mitchell, wherever you currently are, allow me to be perfectly clear. You cruelly shackled a disabled veteran to her own home. You systematically terrorized families. You embezzled funds. And now you are attempting to abuse the legal system." He turned to face us. "This frivolous lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am issuing an immediate bench warrant for Mrs. Mitchell's arrest and freezing all her financial assets." But the most significant part came next. Mrs. Amy's mother, The judge addressed Mom directly. "Would you please approach the bench?" Mom wheeled forward. "Ma'am, I have personally reviewed your distinguished military service record. Your work investigating housing discrimination was truly exemplary. It seems entirely fitting that you continue that crucial mission." He smiled. "I am formally appointing you as special advisor to the court for all HOA-related cases within this judicial district." The courtroom erupted in thunderous applause. 2 weeks later, Karen was finally caught trying to illegally sneak back into the country. The Canadian Border Patrol recognized her distinct appearance from our viral video. At her real sentencing, she remained utterly defiant. "You are all sheep. I was merely protecting property values." The judge was not swayed. 15 years in federal prison, plus full restitution to every single family she harmed. As the marshals escorted her away, Karen's eyes locked with Mom's. "You ruined my life." Mom responded quietly, "No, Karen. You ruined yourself the exact moment you placed chains on another human being." The aftermath brought about profound, lasting change. Our neighborhood successfully elected its first genuinely democratic HOA board. Mom became president, implementing fair policies that protected everyone's rights. The FBI expanded their massive investigation nationwide, ultimately uncovering similar criminal schemes in 200 communities. Mom testified before Congress, leading directly to new federal protections against HOA abuse. Our community healing process took many months. We hosted communal potlucks, constructed wheelchair-accessible gardens, and created a neighborhood watch that truly looked out for each other, not just property values. 1 year later, at our first annual Unity Festival, Agent Rodriguez pulled me aside for a final conversation. "Remember wondering why the FBI was watching so intently? Your mom had contacted us months before the chaining incident. She strongly suspected Karen's criminal scheme and was diligently gathering evidence." Mom overheard and gave a subtle wink. "Military intelligence habits die very hard." I laughed. "So you knew all along?" "Not absolutely everything," she conceded, "but enough to be fully prepared when Karen finally crossed the line." Today, Silverbrook Estates is renowned not for its soaring property values, but for its core values of inclusion and genuine compassion. Mom's Legal Defense Fund has successfully helped hundreds of HOA abuse victims nationwide. And Karen? She still writes us letters from federal prison, adamantly insisting she was correct. We now utilize them as perfect examples in Mom's training sessions for new HOA boards. They serve as clear illustrations of how authority, without empathy, inevitably descends into tyranny. The chains that were intended to bind us instead forged an unbreakable community bond. Sometimes the darkest actions spark the brightest transformations.